It's the event DC has been leading up to for the last couple of years, it feels like anyway, Death Metal #1. So how is it? And more importantly, I'll ask the question I haven't asked for a long time in these reviews. Is it for you? Hey everybody, this is Perch. This is Dark Knight's Death Metal #1. It's a sequel to Metal, which was an event that was as popular. I think it was more popular than DC thought it would be when it first came out. I mean, certainly they put Snyder and Greg Capullo on it. Those are two of their strongest talents in the company. And I mean, they knew it would do well. But the title it tapped into something in the comic industry at the time. And keep in mind, DC was coming out of Rebirth, and they were putting a lot of pieces together. And then they had Doomsday Clock and they had Metal kind of both coming out. And it was at the time, a lot was going right for DC. And then Doomsday Clock started to slip a bit in schedule. Metal did ship on time, wound up expanding, getting some more issues. And it was seen as kind of the big thing that worked. Following up from Metal, we got a longish run from Scott Snyder, who did on Justice League. And it really set up kind of a lot of elements that Death Metal would play into with Perpetua and Villainy, and kind of bringing kind of two big themes in. I mean, there's a lot of complexity underneath it, but at the surface, there's good, there's evil, there's heroic kind of champion, protective justice magic, and energy is a better way to put it, and crisis energy and magic. And so then some things happened. Dan Didio was released from DC. The idea of Generation 5 was shuffled a bit, or a lot, depending on the point of view. Brian Michael Bendis came in, took over Superman. AT&T purchased Time Warner and DC. And then, of course, we had the pandemic and pauses. And so a lot of things have occurred over the last 12 months, and many of those in the last 6 months. And it's changed kind of the way that a lot of this comic ultimately was rolled out. DC, of course, broke its exclusive with Diamond. And I say all this because now suddenly Death Metal has a bigger responsibility than it did before. A lot is riding on this event. It was always going to be DC's kind of big summer event. They went through all the effort of putting Year of the Villain out and Hell Arisen and all these different sites, the titles that got here. But the stakes are quite a bit higher. Stakes are high in the comic, which we're about to get into, but the stakes are high for DC for this title to really land and be the huge kind of blockbuster seller. So how does it go? Again, we've got the team of Scott Snyder, Greg Capullo, and our title opens up with Sergeant Rock. What am I saying? Let me first go ahead. If you're watching the video at this point, spoilers. We're going to go through the comic. We're going to review it. There's absolutely spoilers here in this comic. So, if you've at the video at this point and you're surprised there's spoilers, you shouldn't be, but spoilers. So anyway, our comic opens up. We've got kind of an old DC face, and this is kind of been the theme of what Snyder and DC has been saying about this event, is that everything matters, and it's really going to dip into the bigger DC universe and everything else. And so kind of the proof is on the page, and then we've got Sergeant Rock right off the bat. He's smoking 3 cigarettes at once, like a real soldier. Anyway, and he's got a big kind of Rob Liefeld gun here, and he's given kind of his speech that things are rough out there. So we move from that page to a map of the new DCU, which is basically this kind of hellish wasteland. Our title is an Anti-Crisis Part 1, and it all matters. Basically, everything comes in, and this is going to be kind of a crisis. DC is famous for their crisis events, but it's an anti-crisis, and we'll get into what that means further down in the comic. Now, everybody in this comic, Scott Snyder, Greg Capullo, and all the different members of the team have kind of heavy metal like subtitles. We got Jared, Victim of Changes, Blondo, and Andrew, Crazy Train, Marino. And this, depending on your point of view, this gets a little tiresome as the issue goes on. It definitely it's trying to be, this is metal, and it's banking on the idea that there's going to be this nostalgic, hell yeah, kind of metal feel to the reader, and that they're not going to overdo it. But I'm very curious as the comic gets into issue 2 through 7, are they going to keep going with the the rock metal, heavy metal analogies or not? That will be interesting to see how it rolls out. But it becomes not subtle. And not that the comic's supposed to be subtle. This is definitely in all ways is a design to beat you over the head with the idea of holy crap, you didn't see this coming, and here's heavy metal versions of characters and everything else. It just your appetite may vary by the time it's all over. So we go to Hell, formerly Themyscira. This is the DCU. It's reminded in those cutesy subtitles I always hate. Yes, the real DCU. Wonder Woman is interrupted by the Swamp Thing, who is basically emaciated and is burning, as an indication that the green is pretty much an end as well in this world. And Wonder Woman is cutting up the invisible jet to do something. We'll find out what later. But she's basically chainsawing it up. So we learn that she's kind of ruling in this new domain. She's got a bunch of prisoners here, famous villains that we've seen, everyone from the Riddler to Mr. Freeze Captain Cold to the Joker, Eclipso, and we're getting a sense that the bat symbol is made illegal or can if you're wearing it or showing it, to be thrown into the pits if you're not one of the Batmen. And so Diana and Swamp Thing come in, and she's met by a prisoner and a couple of Batmen. We've got the dinosaur Batman, the robot dinosaur, and here we get some banter back and forth, and we get kind of a cutesy, a little bit of jokes. The dinosaur making fun of his arms. Hey, if you have a Tyrannosaurus, it feels like somebody has to make a joke about the tiny arms. I'm not sure why that's become a given, but there you go. But anyway, they've got a new prisoner. This prisoner is super dangerous. They want the prisoner taken down into the pits. And we're not sure who this is, but meanwhile, Diana has to go meet the Master. The Master, of course, looks to be the Batman who laughs. So this book is kind of done in chapters. We get kind of pages where they'll do some dialogue. There's a lot of exposition in this book. So the book is trying to set up the world as fast as it can. It has 7 issues basically. So it's got to very rapidly kind of set up the universe and lots of exposition. We got a guidebook, I think, around between issue 3 and 4 coming out as well, where it's going to dive more into kind of the universe and everything. But there's a lot of world building that has to take place in a very small amount of pages. So we see the Castle Batman here. It's got the Inception, Doctor Strange, buildings at different angles situation going on, and the Batman who laughs is talking to his Justice League, and his Justice League looks sort of like the Justice League. We've got Harley Quinn, we've got Aquaman, we've got Wonder Woman and Mr. Miracle. They're each one is paired with a dark multiverse Batman, various kind of crazy Batman or bats. And we learn a little bit. We learned from the Batman who laughs that Perpetua is destroying the universes in the multiverse. She just destroyed universe number 22, which I believe was the Shazam universe. So we see a little bit piece from there. I should go look up the actual map and verify. But anyway, she's destroying all the multiverses so she can then rebuild things in her own image. And the Batman who laughs is basically helping her out in all this. And as he's kind of going over his plan and more exposition, Wonder Woman is contacted by Batman, and he's kind of urging her to melt down the jet, build a shield, kind of do some other things. And as she's talking to him, they don't quite remember how they got there. They know that the 5 most powerful beings were kind of touched, and something occurred that caused everything to go wrong and put them in this state, but they don't quite remember what. So Batman who laughs picks up on the fact that Diana is not paying any attention to the exposition. And she's tired. She's had a long day of listening to speeches, and suddenly a arrow comes out. A bunch of the Robins, the little demon Robins, kind of shield their master, and it's Bruce Wayne, real Batman, and he's here to kind of attack. And so the battle erupts of a bunch of other kind of kooky Batman. Basically, it appears that the Batman Who Laughs has gone into the dark multiverse and basically got every different variation of Batman he can find, from Scarecrow Batman to Plastic Man Batman to Etrigan the Demon, Deathstroke, all these different Batman. So the Batman are all coming. They come out of the little door, and they're racing over the hill to come attack Bruce, and the Justice League is captured by their handlers, and just as it looks like they're hopelessly outnumbered, Bruce Wayne is wearing a Black Lantern ring and basically causes the dead to rise up out of the ground. So we get kind of heavy metal spike. You can always tell when serious heroes are getting kind of serious and metal, because when they put the little spikes on their shoulders, that's kind of the comic code for I'm serious now. I've got my leather jacket. I've got my spikes. So they were getting a big fight of Batman versus zombies, and meanwhile, Batman continues a little conversation about Diana, urging her to get to the prisoner that they put down. Figure out a way to kind of rescue things and bring it all back. And we get a little brief scene of zombie Jonah Hex. That's nice. Meanwhile, we get a very, very brief, peek at a planet made of living bone, and Lobo is digging something up. And we don't know exactly who he's talking to exactly, but you get the feeling he's probably maybe doing something good here. I don't know. He digs up something that looks like some kind of wooden, is a shield or a door, or it's got a D. It's unclear. Maybe it's a DC logo. It's down in here. That could be. It's probably not that. Anyway, he's digging up this living bone, and he finds something, and we'll find out what that is. It's like a little interlude there. So meanwhile, Wonder Woman has gone back into the pit, to hell, and she's hanging out there with Swamp Thing. And what's weird about this is that they've just, she basically just moved against Batman Who Laughs, and there's a big battle going on up on the Earth or something. But maybe that the battle is over. We're not really sure what went on there, but things are okay now, I guess. I don't know how she got away, but she's hanging out back in the pad. And she's going to go down into the pits. She's going to see, who this is. She can't take the darkness anymore. She can't fight the way Bruce wants. Wonder Woman has to fight her own way. So down she goes, and she discovers that the prisoner they put in there is Wally West. And Wally West, he seems like he's been separated from the Mobius chair, and he looks more like Wally West in the new Dr. Manhattan Wally West outfit. He's still got the Dr. Manhattan symbol on his forehead, but he's something is gone wrong, and he's just so tired. He wants to be me. He seems down and depressed again. It's like, oh no, did you go to another mental hospital and kill some people? Come on, Wally. Jeez. So he's trying to get her to remember what happened, and we get basically some more exposition here of the different elements of the DC universe. We get the Anti-Monitor, we get the Crisis with Superboy here, we get the Final Crisis, the Grant Morrison version, the Parallax moment, and Metal, and kind of this storyline of how that these beings gave birth to a new reality and a multiverse, and Perpetua started our reality with Crisis energy. Kind of at its core, but then the people are like, that's no good. You're just you're being mean, and so they trapped her behind the source wall, and they encouraged her just, hey, while you're in prison, check us out over here. We're going to be living happily, and you will learn to love us while we're out here having a good time, and you're trapped in the wall. But that didn't work, because it turns out when you trap people in a wall in the galaxy, they just tend to get pissed. So she eventually breaks out and runs amok. And so it's like, well, okay, then there was a big battle of some kind, but this is the big battle that the Justice League went off to go fight at the end of Snyder's Justice League comic, harnessing the Justice energy. But we don't see that battle. We just know that kind of they lost potentially, or something happened that blew out the sun. And, Perpetua is still powerful because the Batman Who Laughs promised her that if he could be her ally and he could be there, then she'd have a conduit to the dark multiverse where great crises are forever happening, and she can more or less be forever empowered as long as people remember him, which is why the Justice League was kept alive and not just killed. Makes sense? Sure. So as they're talking, hey, it turns out the Batman Who Laughs is, hiding in some green smoke, and he's basically says, I'll give you a planet, and you can put all the nice people on the planet of your own, as long as you keep your promise and keep working for me and doing things here. And he's thinking like Bruce. So he's like, oh, let me guess your strategy, knock me out, and then you'd get a shield to hide behind, and that's all good. But Wonder Woman was like, I don't hide. I wouldn't make a shield, and I already made it, and I made my chainsaw invisible, and she uses it and just wrecks the Batman Who Laughs. So she basically guts him out, and energy kind of flies everywhere, and suddenly. The mage Batman jumps back to the Robins and says, hey, the Master's dead. We got to initiate his true plan. And we know from Snyder's earlier run that we were putting a lot of Batman, Bruce Wayne into different bodies, kind of clones. And this was a kind of a big plot point of his. And it looks like we're getting more of that because, the Batmage pushes the kind of a anti-Watchman button, and out comes a Dr. Manhattan-ish Bruce Wayne out of blue, and he's got a little symbol there, and he's not naked, so it's not that metal. Hey, if you were really trying to be super metal, he'd come out there just swinging a huge. Anyway, so that looks bad. And we kind of close where we opened with Sergeant Rock and Bruce Wayne. The Bruce Wayne comes on and says, "Fight's happening now. Come on, one last fight, everybody together." He picks up Sergeant Rock. And we discovered Sergeant Rock has no torso or legs. It's just like a body with a spine hanging out. And apparently he's alive, of course, because Bruce Wayne has the Black Lantern ring. So that's how our issue ends. So a lot to digest here. And then we get some, the backstage pass for death metal and, your mind aren't ready. We just blew your mind. So for me, so a couple things. Like I said at the beginning, they lean into the metal stuff just way to the point that the comic starts to almost take a backseat to metal puns and heavy metal stuff. It's not subtle. And that's fine. But it's like, it's a little hard to tell at this point. And I don't mean this as a criticism exactly. I'm sure it kind of sounds that way, but it's like, what is the comic trying to be? Is it an event comic? Is it a celebration? Is it bringing all these things together? Is it a kind of a homage to heavy metal? Is it a way to kind of do Elseworlds fan service type stuff around a bunch of the DC heroes? Is it trying to set up the next era of DC? Well, the reality is it's trying to do all of those things. And that's a lot to do in one comic, especially now that the pressure of kind of DC in the comic industry is weighing on the shoulders. DC will go on whether this event is successful or not successful, but it's suddenly a lot, like I said, the stakes have risen. They've turned it up to 11. And that's a tough position for it to be in. With all that weight, it puts a lot of pressure on this comic. As a fan, you can read this and you shouldn't really care. And this can be, a weird thing to say, but as a fan, you shouldn't care whether DC is surviving or not surviving or anything. You should just care about whether it's a great story. The business aspects of it, the finances and all that kind of stuff is not, you want them to survive, but as fans, sometimes we get too wrapped up in trying to understand all that and get our arms around it. So parts of this comic make you think about those things, maybe a little bit more than you want to. In terms of a wild, crazy ride, I suspect this comic will read a little bit better once you've got a couple issues behind you. I think it's kind of like Metal did as well. It sets some things up, but the comic is more enjoyable to read as a collection than in individual issues. That's just as you read the comic, you'll detect that. Still some fun stuff here. I like that it's diving into a bunch of the DC multiverse in history. I think that's cool. It's kind of, one of the things, I recently reread the original Crisis on Infinite Earths, and there was a lot of interludes and tie-ins and kind of brief glimpses of characters. And it was done, you could have a character show up in a panel and it was cool. It was like a nod, and maybe that was all you got in the comic, but it was still, it kind of spoke to the bigger multiverse. Here, we're trying to kind of do the same thing, but we're giving more room to those pages. Rather than just have a panel with somebody showing up in the background, we're showing a little bit more. And that is, they're going to run out of time. I mean, we're 1/7 of the way through it. And it makes it feel a little bit smaller of a story than a big, expansive story. My feeling is, and I'm guessing, is that the death metal is going to, by issue 3 and so on, it's going to grow and grow and grow, and it'll feel like a bigger universe. Right now, it feels like a very confined story. Again, that's not a bad thing. It's just starting out different from how some of the other crises are going. And it also puts pressure if this is going to be the big event that, in its own comic, it says everything matters. You've got to eventually figure out ways to tie in everything and make it feel like everything. Right now, it feels like a fairly linear story from start to finish. But I'm intrigued. Is this comic for you? Is the big question. If you like kind of summer big blockbuster type events, this comic is for you. If you enjoyed Snyder's Justice League run, but you felt at times it was too wordy or dense, this comic is probably for you, because it's stripping away a lot of the a lot of those build-up moments, and it's really getting to the core of things. It is very much like a Justice League DC Crisis cartoon style, if that makes any sense. I mean, again, that sounds insulting. I don't mean that insulting either. I mean that whereas, Grant Morrison had a lot of kind of literary kind of denseness to it, maybe too much at times, and where Crisis on Infinite Earths had kind of a DC multiverse, almost encyclopedia type feel to it, this is much lighter than that. It definitely is a lighter, jumpier read. It is designed to have some shock moments in there, but it's if you put it this way, if you like the Batman Last Night on Earth series, you're going to like this. It definitely feels right in that vein, right in that universe, and it all fits together very well where that's concerned. In terms of should you pick it up, I mean, this is going to be the thing DC is banking their year on. So if you're a DC fan, it's kind of have to. This is going to be where a lot of stuff kind of circles around and goes around. It'll be very interesting to see kind of midway through this series how other books are and aren't tying into it. Like who escapes. It's kind of like Secret Wars was for Marvel a couple years ago. Nothing really gets to escape death metal, it feels like. Anyway, which, if it's good, that'll be great. And if it's not, it's gonna be a drag for some DC fans. So we'll see. Interesting issue. I'm gonna, lot there. I remember there's some first issues to events where I'm like, oh my God, this is gonna be, they're gonna do some really crazy stuff here. With this one, you definitely get the sense they're going to do some crazy stuff, but because they hyped, hey, we're going to do some crazy stuff so much right at the beginning, you knew that going in, it kind of, you're expecting crazy stuff. And because you're expecting it, it's less crazy. Does that make any sense? I don't know. It's an interesting read. It's I'll read it a few more times and go through it, but hope you liked it. What did you think? Leave your comments below. Like, subscribe, click the bell for notifications if you're so inclined. Follow me on Twitter and Facebook at Comic Perch, and thanks for listening.